Hey guys, tonight we are going to step quietly into the Bronze Age, a world of dusty paths, smoky fires, rough stone walls, hand-shaped pottery, and long days ruled by the rising and setting sun. You open your eyes beneath a simple woven covering, and for a moment, everything seems strangely peaceful. Then you realize there is no electric light, no running water, no refrigerator humming nearby, and certainly no convenient little button that can make your problems disappear. You probably won't survive this, not because some warrior is waiting outside your doorway, but because the ordinary parts of life are about to become surprisingly difficult. Getting water requires effort. Preparing food takes time. Staying warm takes planning. Even keeping your clothes clean can become a small adventure. And while you might imagine yourself heroically mastering the Bronze Age within a few days, the Bronze Age would probably take one look at your modern habits and quietly disagree. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me where you're listening from and what your local time is. Maybe you're lying awake somewhere in the United States, perhaps it's late at night in a quiet bedroom, or maybe you're listening much earlier than bedtime. Wherever you are, leave your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the silence, not complete silence, of course. There is always something moving. A distant animal calls. Someone shifts outside. A piece of wood settles in the fire. Wind brushes against the walls of the settlement, carrying the smell of earth, smoke, animals, and yesterday's cooking. But what is missing is the enormous mechanical background noise you have grown accustomed to. No traffic, no engines, no refrigerator, no air conditioner. No notification sound from a phone. Nothing is reminding you that millions of other people are awake and moving around the planet. Instead, your world is small. Very small. You are somewhere in the Bronze Age, during a period when communities across different parts of Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Near East are developing complex societies, trading materials over long distances, raising crops and animals, building settlements, and working with bronze. The exact place hardly matters for your first morning. What matters is that you have arrived without your modern knowledge of where everything is. You don't know which plants are safe. You don't know where the nearest reliable water source is. You don't know how to repair your clothing. You don't know how to preserve a harvest. You don't know how to recognize a dangerous animal from its tracks. You don't know how much food should be saved for winter. And you certainly don't know what your neighbors expect you to contribute. That last problem may become the most important. Because Bronze Age survival is rarely a story about one person wandering dramatically through the wilderness. It is mostly a story about communities. People survive because other people know things. Someone knows when to plant. Someone knows how to shape a tool. Someone knows which animals are healthy. Someone knows how to build a wall. Someone knows how to grind grain. Someone knows how to make pottery. Someone knows where traders usually arrive. Someone knows which neighboring settlement should be avoided. And you know none of this, so you lie still for another moment, hoping that perhaps nobody has noticed your complete lack of useful knowledge. Unfortunately, morning has arrived. And morning means work. You slowly sit up. The shelter around you is practical rather than luxurious. Depending on where you have landed, it might be made partly from timber, mud, reeds, stone, woven materials, or combinations of these. The walls are designed to keep weather outside, but they are not built around the idea of perfect indoor comfort. There are no perfectly sealed windows, no thermostat, no soft mattress engineered specifically for your spine. Your sleeping surface is simple, perhaps layered with vegetation, woven material, hides, or other locally available materials. You move carefully because the floor is uneven. Outside, the settlement is waking. Smoke rises from cooking fires. People begin carrying containers. Animals stir. Children move between households. Adults prepare for another day of work. You step outside, and the morning air feels cooler than you expected. The ground is hard beneath your feet. You look around. There is nothing here that immediately resembles the world you came from. Yet there is something strangely familiar. People are still waking up. People are still preparing breakfast. People are still worrying about work. People are still trying to keep their families safe. People are still hoping the weather will behave. The technology is different. The worries are not. You watch someone preparing food and realize something important. Breakfast is not waiting for you. There is no packaged meal, no toaster, no kettle that heats water instantly, no supermarket around the corner. Food begins with preparation. And preparation begins with resources. Grain must be stored. Grain must be processed. Water must be available. Fire must be maintained. Utensils must be ready. The entire process takes time. You begin to understand that time itself feels different here. In your modern life, you can save enormous amounts of time because machines do things for you. A washing machine cleans clothing. A stove produces controlled heat. A refrigerator preserves food. A vehicle carries you across long distances. A pump moves water. A light bulb pushes darkness away. The Bronze Age gives you none of those shortcuts. Instead, every convenience has a human cost. Someone has to gather fuel. Someone has to carry water. Someone has to process grain. Someone has to repair tools. Someone has to watch animals. Someone has to maintain buildings. Someone has to prepare food. Someone has to clean. And someone has to teach the next generation how to do all of it. You look at the settlement again. It suddenly seems less primitive than you first imagined. It is complicated. The people here have systems. They have knowledge. They have routines refined through generations. You are the primitive one. At least for now. A person nearby gestures toward a container. You understand what they want. Water. Of course. You follow. The first walk of your Bronze Age life begins. And it is only a short distance. Yet already, you are learning the first rule of this world. Nothing comes directly to you. If you want something, you go and get it. If you want warmth, you make fire. If you want food, you prepare it. If you want water, you carry it. If you want shelter, you help build it. And if you want to survive another day, you become useful. The morning sun rises higher. You walk toward the water source with the others, carrying a container that suddenly feels much heavier than it looked. Behind you, the settlement continues waking. Ahead of you waits the first ordinary task of your new life. It is not heroic. It is not glamorous. It is simply necessary. And that, more than anything, is what makes the Bronze Age so exhausting. You begin the morning by discovering that waking up is the easy part. The difficult part is everything that comes afterward. The sun has barely climbed above the horizon when the settlement is already moving. There is no gentle transition between sleep and responsibility. No lingering beneath a warm blanket while deciding whether you feel energetic enough to begin the day. The day has begun, and apparently so have you. You step outside and feel the cool morning air against your face. The ground is uneven beneath your feet. Somewhere nearby, an animal makes an impatient sound. Smoke from several hearths drifts slowly through the settlement, carrying the smell of burning wood and yesterday's ashes. You would probably love a shower right now. Unfortunately, the Bronze Age has not invented the convenient version. Water exists, of course. People wash. People understand cleanliness. But water does not simply appear whenever you turn a handle. It has to come from somewhere, and somewhere is often inconveniently far away. You watch as several people begin preparing containers for the morning journey. Some are made from pottery, others from materials suited to the local environment. Whatever their shape, they all have one important feature. They can become heavy. You pick one up. It seems manageable. For about 30 seconds, then you remember that you have to carry it back. This is one of the great differences between your world and theirs. Modern life hides enormous amounts of physical labor. You turn a tap and water appears. The system behind that simple action is enormous, but you rarely see it. Here, the system is standing directly in front of you. A person, carrying water. Again, and again, and again. You begin walking toward the source. The path is dusty, packed down by generations of feet. You pass homes that are already becoming busy. Someone is sweeping an area outside a doorway. Someone else is checking animals. A child carries a smaller container. A dog or similar village animal moves through the settlement. apparently unconcerned with the difficulties of Bronze Age infrastructure. You envy the animal. At least it isn't carrying water. As you walk, you notice something else. Nobody appears particularly surprised by the work. That is because this is normal. People have grown up with these routines. They know how much water their household needs. They know when the source is busiest. They know which paths are easiest. They know how to carry a container without wasting effort. You know none of these things. So you carry the container awkwardly. Your shoulders complain. Your arms become tired. And you have not even reached the water yet. You begin to understand why physical strength mattered so much in everyday ancient life. Survival was not only about dramatic dangers. It was about thousands of small physical tasks repeated over years. Carry, lift, grind, walk, dig, build, fetch, repeat. There is no shortcut. At the water source, the mood changes slightly. The place is busy. People gather from different households, filling containers, talking quietly, checking the water, and returning home. Depending on the settlement and environment, the source might be a river, spring, well, lake, or another dependable supply. You watch the water closely. It looks beautiful. You also realize that looking beautiful does not automatically make water safe. The people here have their own knowledge about water sources, seasons, animals, and local conditions. They have learned through experience. Their survival depends on understanding their environment. You, meanwhile, are still trying to figure out how to lift the container without dropping it. You kneel. The water moves gently. For a moment, everything becomes peaceful. The river reflects the morning sky. Reeds move in the breeze. Birds call from somewhere beyond the bank. You could almost forget that you are living in a world where every ordinary necessity requires effort. Then you remember the walk back. You fill the container. It becomes heavier, much heavier. You stand carefully. Your body immediately understands the problem. You begin walking. The settlement is not getting closer. That is the annoying thing about walking. You continue. Step after step. The container presses against your side. Water shifts inside it with every movement. You adjust your grip. Your fingers become uncomfortable. You change hands. A few minutes later, you change hands again. Someone walking beside you seems completely unaffected. You wonder if they secretly have superhuman strength. Probably not. They are simply accustomed to it. That may be one of the most important lessons of your Bronze Age life. The people around you are not necessarily stronger because they possess some mysterious ancient ability. They have trained their bodies through daily necessity. Their ordinary life is exercise. Your ordinary life is mostly sitting. The comparison is not going to end well for you. Eventually, you reach the settlement again. You place the container down. For a moment, you feel victorious. Then someone immediately takes some of the water away for cooking. Another portion is needed for washing. More will be needed later. You stare at the container. You have just carried it all that way, and somehow the household has already made plans for every drop. Water is not wasted. Not because everyone has memorized a modern environmental campaign. Because wasting it would simply be foolish. The same principle applies to almost everything. Wood is valuable. Food is valuable. Cloth is valuable. Metal is valuable. Time is valuable. Even broken objects may have another use. You begin looking around the home differently. A cracked pot is not automatically trash. A worn piece of cloth might still become a patch. A piece of wood might become a handle. Ashes can have uses. Animal products can be transformed into tools, containers, clothing, or other necessities. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything belongs to a system. Now comes washing. You might imagine that everyone simply avoids bathing and accepts being dirty. That would be too simple. People in the Bronze Age were not unaware of cleanliness. Different societies had different customs and facilities, and bathing practices could vary enormously depending on location, wealth, season, and available water. But your modern expectation of abundant hot running water is not waiting for you. If you want warm water, somebody has to heat it. That means fuel. And fuel means gathering, carrying, storing, and burning something. You look toward the hearth. The fire is already being fed. Wood does not magically appear beside it. Someone had to collect it. You suddenly realize that your morning has involved several separate systems already. Water, fuel, food, shelter. And each system depends on labor. The fire crackles. You sit nearby and watch someone prepare the morning meal. Grain is being processed. The motion is repetitive. Stone moves against grain. Grain becomes flour. Flour becomes something edible. The process is simple in theory. In practice, it takes time. You think about your own kitchen. A modern meal can begin with an object pulled from a refrigerator, opened with a packet, placed inside a machine, and heated in minutes. Here, the meal begins much earlier, perhaps months earlier. Someone planted the crop, someone tended it, someone protected it, someone harvested it, someone dried and stored it, someone transported it, someone ground it, and now someone prepares it. A bowl of food can represent an entire chain of human effort. You look at the simple meal with new respect. There may not be much variety. There may not be elaborate decoration. But it is the final result of work spread across seasons. You eat slowly. The food is warm. The fire gives off a gentle heat. For the first time since waking, you begin to relax. Then you notice something on your clothing. Dust, of course. There is dust everywhere. You brush it away. It returns almost immediately. The ground is dirt. The paths are dirt. Fields are dirt. Animals walk through dirt. Wind carries dirt. Your clothes are going to become familiar with it. You begin to understand that modern cleanliness is not simply about people becoming more careful over time. It is partly about technology. Water systems, soap production, washing machines, indoor plumbing, reliable heating, manufactured fabrics. All of these things make cleanliness easier. In the Bronze Age, cleanliness can require time, effort, and resources. The same is true for almost every comfort. You look around again. The settlement feels ordinary now. That is perhaps the strangest part. Only a short while ago, everything looked ancient and unfamiliar. Now you are beginning to see the logic. People wake. They collect water. They prepare food. They tend animals. They work. They repair. They share responsibilities. They rest when they can. Then they do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. And the day after that. There is no single moment when you suddenly become a Bronze Age expert. Instead, survival begins with learning one ordinary task at a time. How to carry water. How to preserve food. How to tend a fire. How to recognize useful materials. How to work with others. How to avoid wasting what the settlement cannot easily replace. You are still terrible at most of these things. But at least now you understand why. The Bronze Age is not difficult because everyone is constantly fighting monsters or escaping disasters. It is difficult because ordinary life is demanding. The smallest necessities require planning. The simplest comforts require labor. And every morning begins with the same quiet question. What needs to be done today? You look toward the fields. The sun is higher now. The coolness of dawn is disappearing. Soon the real work of the day will begin. And you have a growing suspicion that carrying water was merely the warm-up. The morning meal is over. But you are beginning to suspect that the word meal may be doing too much work. There is food. That is important, but there is not an endless supply of it, and there certainly is not a magical kitchen where something delicious appears whenever you become slightly hungry. Instead, food is a chain of decisions. What was grown? What was stored? What survived the previous season? What can be eaten today? What needs to be saved? And most importantly, what happens if the next harvest is poor? You look across the settlement and realize that hunger is not simply a feeling here. It is a possibility that quietly follows everyone. You might have enough food today. That does not automatically mean you have enough food next month. This changes the way you think about eating. In your modern life, food can feel permanent. You open a cupboard and find something. You open a refrigerator and find something else. You walk into a store and see shelves filled with products from places you may never visit. In the Bronze Age, the connection between food and the land is much more obvious. If the crops fail, everyone notices. If animals become sick, everyone notices. If rain does not arrive at the right time, everyone notices. If pests damage stored grain, everyone notices. There is no distant supply chain quietly replacing what has disappeared. You look at the grain stored inside a large clay vessel. It suddenly seems more important than gold. Not because grain is beautiful, because grain can keep people alive. Someone has spent months producing it. The field had to be prepared. Seeds had to be planted. Crops had to be protected. Harvesting had to happen at the right time. The grain had to be dried and stored. And now the household must decide how quickly to use it. You watch someone measure out a portion. The movement is careful. Nothing is casual. A little too much today might mean a little less later. You begin to understand why storage is so important. The Bronze Age is partly a civilization of containers, jars, baskets, pits, granaries, storage rooms, anything capable of protecting food from moisture, animals, insects, and simple human impatience becomes valuable. You stare at a large clay jar. It is not decorated with anything particularly impressive, yet it represents security. Inside might be enough grain to support a household for some time. You suddenly feel an urge to protect the jar personally. Nobody asked you to. You simply understand. This is food. Do not break it. A small animal wanders nearby. You watch it carefully. Animals have their own relationship with the settlement. Some provide food. Some provide labor. Some provide materials. Some compete with people for stored food. And some are simply animals living around humans because there is food nearby. The line between household and livestock is much more visible here. You see goats moving through the settlement. Sheep gather near an enclosure. Cattle stand heavily in the morning warmth. Birds search around the ground. Each animal represents possibilities and responsibilities. Milk, meat, wool, hides, bones, manure, transport, labor, protection. Nothing is wasted easily. You begin wondering what you would do if someone handed you a sheep and told you to keep it healthy. You realize you would have no idea. The people around you would. They know which animals are strong. They know what they eat. They know where to take them. They know when weather might become dangerous. They know how to protect young animals. Their knowledge is practical, and it has been accumulated over generations. You follow someone toward the fields. The landscape looks peaceful. That is misleading. Farming is not peaceful when you have to do it yourself. You see people working the soil with simple tools. The movements are repetitive. Lift, press, pull, turn, step, repeat. There is no engine doing the hard part. There is no machine cutting rows at extraordinary speed. There is only human effort, animal power where available, and tools that must be maintained. You watch the soil being prepared. The sun climbs higher. Your shoulders already feel tired, and you have barely started. You begin to understand that food is expensive in a way that has nothing to do with money. It costs time. It costs labor. It costs land. It costs water. It costs knowledge. And sometimes it costs luck. That final one may be the most frustrating. You can work perfectly and still have a bad harvest. Rain can arrive too late. A storm can destroy crops. A long dry period can weaken plants. Pests can spread. Animals can become ill. A field can simply fail to produce what you hoped. There is no customer service number for the weather. You imagine calling someone and saying, "Hello, my harvest has been disappointing. Could you please send another season?" The Bronze Age does not provide this service. So people adapt. They diversify. They store. They share. They trade. They learn which crops perform better in particular conditions. They watch the sky. They watch the soil. They watch the animals. They pay attention. You begin to realize that ancient farming required a huge amount of observation. The landscape was a kind of calendar. Changes in plants could tell you about seasons. Animal behavior could provide clues. The position of the sun and stars mattered. Weather patterns mattered. The timing of planting mattered. The timing of harvesting mattered. You may have a calendar on your phone. They had the environment. And if you ignored it, the consequences could be serious. Back in the settlement, food preparation continues. Grain must be ground. That means the stone mill. You sit beside it and watch. At first, the motion seems simple. Then you try it. The stone is heavier than expected. You push. The grain shifts. You push again. The work continues. After a while, your arms feel warm. After longer, your shoulders complain. The person beside you keeps going. You stop. They look at you. You continue. This is becoming a recurring pattern. You are learning that many Bronze Age tasks are not difficult because they require complicated movements. They are difficult because they require simple movements for a very long time. That is a completely different kind of exhaustion. A machine can repeat an action hundreds of times without getting bored. A person cannot. Yet people do. Because the food has to be processed. Eventually, the grain becomes flour. It can be mixed with water. It can become a simple form of bread or porridge or another local staple. The exact food depends on where you are. But the principle remains. The final meal is only the visible end of a much longer process. You take another bite. It tastes simple. You are tempted to think it is boring. Then you remember the journey it took to reach your mouth. You stop judging it. This food represents months of work, perhaps years of accumulated knowledge. You begin eating more slowly. Outside, someone is carrying another basket. Someone is checking an animal. Someone is repairing a tool. Someone is preparing another task. Nobody is standing around wondering what to do. There is always something. You wonder whether people ever became bored. Of course they did. They were human. But boredom here is different. You cannot simply spend an entire afternoon scrolling through entertainment while ignoring everything else. There are chores waiting. If you ignore them, they remain. The grain still needs grinding. The animals still need attention. The fire still needs fuel. The fields still need work. The shelter still needs repairs. The food still needs preparation. You begin to understand why evenings must have felt precious. Rest was not simply a break from work. It was a limited resource. And tomorrow would bring the same responsibilities. You look across the fields again. The Bronze Age is beginning to make more sense. It is not a world where people are constantly desperate. It is a world where survival depends on constant attention. People can have good harvests. They can have celebrations. They can trade. They can build homes. They can raise families. They can enjoy music, stories, friendship, food, and quiet evenings. But underneath all of it is a simple truth. Food must keep coming. And if it does not, everything becomes harder. You finish your meal. The bowl is empty. For a moment, you feel satisfied. Then someone points toward the fields. You follow their gaze. The workday is waiting, and somewhere inside you, a small modern voice whispers that perhaps this Bronze Age adventure was a terrible idea. The voice may have a point. By now, you have learned something important. Food does not simply appear. Neither does water. And as the day continues, the importance of water becomes impossible to ignore. The morning container you carried earlier is already partly empty. Someone has used the water for cooking. Some has been set aside for drinking. Some has been used for washing, and more will be needed before the day is over. You begin to wonder how much water one household actually needs. The answer depends on the household, the climate, the animals, the season, and countless other details. But whatever the exact amount, one thing is certain. It is more than you want to carry. You stand near the edge of the settlement and watch people moving toward the water source again. The sun is stronger now. The coolness of morning has disappeared. Dust rises beneath your feet. You pick up another container. Your shoulders immediately recognize the object. You have become acquainted with this particular form of suffering. The walk begins. At first, you are quiet. Then you notice how carefully everyone moves. Nobody is wasting energy. The most experienced carriers have developed a rhythm. Their steps are steady. Their posture is controlled. They know how to balance the container. They know when to stop. They know where the path becomes uneven. They know how to avoid spilling too much water. You try to copy them. You fail. A little water splashes over the side. You adjust your grip. More splashes. Someone beside you gives a small, amused look. Not cruel. Just familiar. They have probably watched newcomers make the same mistake many times. You continue walking. The path passes beyond the homes. The settlement becomes quieter behind you. Ahead, the landscape opens. You see fields, grass, shrubs, perhaps a line of trees. In the distance, the water source waits. For a moment, the landscape looks peaceful enough to belong on a painting. Then you remember you are carrying a heavy container. Peaceful landscapes are less peaceful when you have chores. Eventually, you arrive. You lower the vessel carefully. The water is cool. You dip your hands into it. The sensation is wonderful. You drink. The water feels like the best thing you have ever tasted. You are tempted to drink too much. Someone reminds you to fill the container first. Fair enough. The water belongs to the household, not just to you. You watch the others. They fill their vessels with practiced movements. Some containers are larger. Some are smaller. Different households have different needs. Children may carry smaller amounts. Adults may carry more. Animals need water too. And animals cannot exactly be told to walk to the river and politely bring some back. So humans do it for them. You look toward the livestock. That adds another layer to the calculation. Every animal requires resources: food, water, shelter or protection, attention. In return, animals can provide valuable things: milk, meat, wool, hides, labor, transportation. The relationship is practical, but it is also deeply connected to survival. You begin walking back. The sun is higher. The container is heavier, or perhaps you are simply more tired. Either way, the journey feels longer. When you finally reach the settlement, you place the water down. Someone immediately uses part of it. You stare. Again? Yes, because water is constantly moving through the household. Drink, cook, wash, animals, cleaning. And then more water is needed. This is when you begin to understand why settlements develop around reliable water sources. A river is not just scenery. A spring is not merely a pleasant feature of the landscape. A dependable water supply can determine where people live. It can influence farming. It can support animals. It can encourage trade. It can become part of the identity of an entire community. You look toward the river again. It is doing more work than you realized. It is supporting life. But there is another problem. Water can also become dangerous. Floods can destroy fields. Heavy rain can damage homes. Standing water can create unhealthy conditions. Rivers can change course. Drought can reduce supplies. A community may depend on the same water source that occasionally threatens it. This is one of the uncomfortable truths of ancient life. The environment is both provider and opponent. You cannot simply control it. You have to live with it. You look around the settlement. The buildings themselves seem designed around local conditions. Walls provide shade. Roofs protect against sun and rain. Storage areas keep supplies protected. Paths connect homes. Animal enclosures sit close enough to be managed, but not always inside living areas. Every feature has a purpose. You begin to appreciate the accumulated intelligence behind the settlement. At first glance, the village looks simple. Now it looks carefully organized. You wonder how long it took people to learn all of this. The answer is not a few days. It is generations. Someone learned from a mistake. Someone remembered a flood. Someone noticed where crops grew best. Someone discovered which building materials lasted longer. Someone learned where animals preferred to stay. Someone passed that knowledge to their children. The next generation added something. Then another. Eventually, the settlement became a living collection of practical experience. You are walking into a library without books. The knowledge is stored in people. That realization makes you feel slightly nervous, because if something happens to the people who know the important skills, knowledge can disappear. There is no searchable database, no instruction manual, no video tutorial, no emergency website explaining how to repair your roof. You look at an older villager, working with a tool. Their hands move confidently. You realize they know things you cannot even think to ask about. How to choose wood, how to shape it, how to repair it, how to recognize weakness, how to make it last. You watch carefully. Learning is not optional. If you want to survive, you have to observe. And you have to remember, your attention is becoming more valuable. You begin noticing details. The direction of the wind, the condition of the soil, the behavior of animals, the level of water, the amount of stored grain, the condition of tools, the strength of the fire. Every detail can become useful. You start thinking differently. Instead of asking, "What do I want?" you ask, "What will we need?" That small change may be one of the biggest steps toward becoming useful in this world. The day continues. The sun begins its slow journey westward. You help carry another container. This time, you manage it better. Not perfectly, but better. Your steps are steadier. You spill less. The container feels slightly less impossible. Someone notices. A small nod. Approval. You feel strangely proud. You have accomplished something that would never impress anyone in your modern world. You carried water without spilling much of it. But here, it matters. You are learning, and learning means becoming less of a burden. That evening, you sit near the hearth. The water you carried is now part of the household's daily rhythm. Some was consumed. Some became food. Some was used for cleaning. The container is empty again. Tomorrow, it will need filling. And the day after that. And the day after that. You stare into the fire. There is something strangely peaceful about this repetition. Modern life is full of convenience, but it is also full of interruptions, messages, schedules, alerts, advertisements, noise. Here, the rhythm is slower, not easier. Definitely not easier, but slower. The same tasks return, the same paths are walked, the same fields are watched, the same animals are cared for, the same water source is visited, the same fire is lit. You begin to understand why ancient people could become deeply connected to particular places. Their lives were tied to the landscape. The river was familiar. The fields were familiar. The hills were familiar. The paths were familiar. The settlement was familiar. The world may have been physically smaller, but every part of it could become known in remarkable detail. You lie down that night. Your body is tired. Your hands ache slightly. Your shoulders are sore. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, the water will still be there, and tomorrow, you will have to go get it again. There is something almost comforting about knowing exactly what tomorrow will demand. You do not have to wonder what the next notification will say. You do not have to check an endless stream of updates. You simply know. Morning will come. The fire will need attention. The animals will need care. The grain will need processing. The water vessel will be empty. And your Bronze Age life will continue. By the fifth day, the settlement no longer looks completely unfamiliar. You know where the water comes from. You know where the grain is stored. You recognize some of the paths. You have learned which animals tend to wander where they should not. You even know which part of the household gets the best warmth from the morning sun. It is a small achievement. But there is another thing you are beginning to understand. You cannot survive here alone. At first, the idea sounds obvious. Humans have always lived together. But in your modern life, it is remarkably easy to imagine yourself as independent. You can buy food without knowing who grew it. You can turn on a light without knowing who built the power station. You can drink water without knowing where the pipes began. You can travel without knowing who maintains the roads. You can live in a building without knowing who designed the foundations. The systems are enormous and mostly invisible. Here, they are standing beside you. The person who grows the grain is your neighbor. The person who repairs the roof is your neighbor. The person who knows how to work metal is your neighbor. The person who tends animals is your neighbor. The person who knows which plants are useful is your neighbor. The person who knows how to make containers is your neighbor. Everyone has something the others need. You walk through the settlement slowly, paying attention. The houses are close enough that you can hear activity from nearby courtyards. Smoke rises from hearths. Animals move through narrow spaces. People talk while working. Children observe adults. Older people supervise tasks or perform work suited to their abilities. There is very little privacy. If you sneeze loudly enough, somebody probably knows. If your goat escapes, somebody definitely knows. If your cooking fire produces an impressive amount of smoke, the entire neighborhood may know. The Bronze Age has many qualities. Personal space is not one of its greatest achievements. Yet the closeness has advantages. If your roof begins leaking, someone nearby may know how to repair it. If you are sick, someone may bring food. If a family has a successful harvest, the surplus can support exchange or community needs. If a fire threatens several homes, people can respond together. If danger approaches, someone can raise an alarm. The settlement works because people are connected. You begin to understand that cooperation is not simply kindness. It is infrastructure. A village is a survival machine built from human relationships. That sounds dramatic. But consider the alternative. Imagine trying to produce everything yourself. Grow your own grain. Raise your own animals. Make your own clothing. Build your own house. Collect your own fuel. Make your own pottery. Repair your own tools. Find your own water. Preserve your own food. Learn every useful skill. You would be exhausted before lunch. So people specialize, not always in the modern sense of having one highly specific career, but in the sense that different people develop different skills. One person may become particularly good at pottery. Another may know farming. Another may work with animals. Another may become skilled at weaving. Another may know metalworking. Another may know trade routes. Another may have knowledge of healing plants. The community becomes stronger because knowledge is distributed. You watch a potter working outside a simple workshop. Their hands move confidently through wet clay. The process looks almost effortless. You know better now. Nothing is effortless. The potter has done this countless times. They know how much pressure to use. They know how thick the wall should be. They know how the clay behaves. They know how to shape the vessel. They know how to dry it. They know how to fire it. You watch closely. The potter notices. They gesture for you to try. You accept. This is your first mistake. The clay collapses slightly. The potter looks at your creation. You look at it. Neither of you says anything. It is not your finest moment. You try again. This time, you apply less pressure. The shape improves. The potter gives a small nod. You feel like you have just passed an ancient examination. The lesson is simple. Knowledge is learned through doing. And people around you are constantly teaching each other, not through formal classrooms, through observation, through repetition, through correction, through stories, through imitation, through memory. You begin to notice children watching adults constantly. A child sees how someone handles a tool, how someone prepares food, how someone approaches an animal, how someone carries a basket, how someone repairs a wall. They are learning even when nobody announces that a lesson has begun. You realize that you are doing the same. Every day, the settlement is teaching you. You simply have to pay attention. As the afternoon continues, you see people gathering in a shared area. Someone has news. Perhaps a trader has arrived. Perhaps a neighboring settlement has sent a message. Perhaps someone has returned from the fields. The details change, but the gathering itself is familiar. People need information. Without modern communication systems, news travels through people. A visitor arrives. A trader brings stories from another settlement. A traveler carries information about distant places. Someone returning from the fields reports changes in weather. Someone who has visited another village shares what they saw. Information moves through conversations. You listen. The world suddenly seems larger than the settlement. You hear names of places you have never seen. Rivers, hills, markets, neighboring communities, distant lands. The Bronze Age may look local when you stand inside a village, but trade networks can stretch surprisingly far. People move materials over considerable distances. Objects found in archaeological sites can reveal connections between communities separated by hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. You would never know this simply by looking at your house. The world is connected, just differently. A trader arrives carrying goods. You watch people examine them. Some objects are familiar. Others are not. There may be beads, textiles, metal objects, stone materials, decorative items, food products. The exact goods depend on the region and period. But the principle is universal. People want things they cannot easily produce themselves. And that creates trade. Trade creates relationships. Relationships create information. Information creates opportunity. And opportunity creates risk, because strangers are still strangers. You watch the trader carefully. They watch you too. Nobody has an online review system. Nobody has a profile page. Trust has to be built face to face. Reputation matters. If someone cheats too many people, others may remember. If someone is reliable, their reputation can travel with them. The human network becomes a kind of information system. You find that fascinating and slightly intimidating, because now you realize that your behavior matters. People notice. People remember. People talk. In a small settlement, you are not anonymous. Your mistakes belong to you. Your successes belong to you. Your family is known. Your work is known. Your relationships are known. You cannot disappear into a crowd of thousands. The thought is both comforting and uncomfortable. If you are struggling, someone may notice. If you are helpful, someone may notice. If you break something important, someone will definitely notice. You decide to be careful. The afternoon fades toward evening. The work slows. People return to their homes. Animals settle. Smoke becomes more visible against the darker sky. You sit near the fire with others. Someone tells a story. You do not understand every detail, but the rhythm is familiar. People have always told stories. They explain the world. They remember ancestors. They entertain children. They preserve lessons. They make long evenings feel shorter. You listen quietly. For a moment, the Bronze Age feels less distant. The technology is different. The language may be different. The buildings are different. But the people are still people. They laugh. They worry. They remember. They complain. They share food. They tell stories. They make jokes. They get tired. They hope tomorrow will be good. You look around the fire. You realize something unexpected. The settlement may not have the comforts you are used to, but it has something you have rarely noticed before. Everyone is needed, not equally, not always fairly, but needed. The village depends on its people. And now, increasingly, it depends on you too. You are still learning. You are still awkward. You still spill water occasionally. Your pottery remains questionable. Your farming technique could politely be described as developing. But you are becoming useful. And in this world, usefulness is a form of belonging. The fire burns lower. The stars appear. Tomorrow there will be more work, more water, more food, more repairs, more learning. But tonight, you are not alone. You are part of the settlement. And for the first time, that feels like something close to safety. The next morning begins before you are ready for it. You hear movement outside. A wooden tool scrapes against the ground. An animal calls. Someone speaks quietly near the doorway. You open your eyes and immediately remember where you are. The Bronze Age. For a few seconds, you lie still. Then your stomach reminds you that yesterday's meal has already become history. You sit up. Your body feels heavier than it did when you first arrived. The water carrying has begun to change your shoulders. The grain grinding has introduced your arms to muscles you apparently never needed before. And your feet have developed a personal relationship with dusty paths. You stand. The morning air is cool. The settlement is waking. Today, you are going to the fields. You already know what that means. Work. Lots of it. You follow the others toward the farmland. The sun is low enough to make long shadows across the ground. The fields look peaceful. Again, this is misleading. You have learned not to trust peaceful landscapes. The first task is simple. The soil needs attention. Depending on the place and season, farmers may prepare land, plant seeds, weed crops, harvest plants, or perform other agricultural tasks. The exact details vary enormously across the Bronze Age. But the basic principle remains. Food requires labor. You take hold of a simple agricultural tool. It is not elegant. It does not have a polished handle designed by an industrial engineer. It is simply useful. You push it into the soil. The earth resists. You push harder. The soil gives slightly. You pull back, again, and again. The movement is repetitive. After several minutes, you are sweating. Someone beside you has barely changed pace. You are beginning to suspect that ancient farmers were secretly training for some enormous endurance competition. They were not. They were just farming. You continue. The sun rises. The temperature climbs. The field stretches ahead. You begin thinking about machines. A modern tractor could cross this ground quickly. A mechanical cultivator could prepare soil with enormous efficiency. But none of those things exist here. The work depends on human bodies and, in some regions and periods, animals. That means the size of the harvest is connected not only to land and weather, but also to available labor. A family can only do so much. A community can do more. A larger organized society can do much more. You begin to see how agriculture can shape civilization itself. More food can support more people. More people can support specialized crafts. Specialized crafts can produce tools. Tools can improve productivity. Trade can connect communities. Surplus can support leaders, soldiers, builders, artisans, and others. A field of grain may look simple, but it can support an entire society. You look at the crop differently now. Each plant represents potential food. Each harvest represents security. Each failed season represents danger. Your hands continue working. The field becomes familiar. The rhythm settles into your body. Lift, press, pull, step, repeat. At first you hate it. Then something strange happens. You stop thinking about every movement. Your body begins to remember. The task becomes automatic. You still feel tired, but the work is no longer completely foreign. That is another survival advantage people develop. Routine. Humans are very good at turning repeated actions into habits. The same thing happened with the water. At first, every step was uncomfortable. Now you know how to carry the vessel. You still dislike it, but you can do it. The same is happening here. You are becoming adapted to your environment, not because the Bronze Age has become easier, because you are becoming more capable. Around you, the field is alive with activity. Some people work with tools. Others remove unwanted plants. Someone carries water. Someone checks the animals. Someone repairs equipment. Everyone has a role. The work is coordinated. Nobody needs a giant digital schedule. They know what needs to happen. Experience has created a rhythm. You watch an older farmer examine the plants. They crouch, touch the soil, look toward the sky, then look across the field. You imitate them. The soil feels dry. You look at the sky, no rain. You understand the concern. Weather is always part of the conversation. A modern farmer can access forecasts, satellite images, irrigation systems, agricultural machines, scientific soil analysis, and enormous amounts of information. The Bronze Age farmer has observation. But observation can be remarkably sophisticated. People know their local environments. They know seasonal patterns. They remember unusual weather. They notice change. You continue working. By midday, the heat has become intense. You drink some water. Immediately, you remember how much effort went into bringing it here. You take only what you need. The person beside you does the same. Waste is difficult to justify when every supply has required labor. The sun continues overhead. You begin to wonder how people worked through this. The answer is not that they ignored exhaustion. They had to manage it. Work patterns could change with seasons. Tasks could be divided. People could rest. Some work might happen during cooler parts of the day. Animals could help with certain tasks where available. Communities could coordinate labor. Ancient people were not simply throwing themselves into endless work without strategy. They had to survive the work itself. That is an important distinction. A person who works too hard today may be unable to work tomorrow. And tomorrow still needs food. So efficiency matters. Experience matters. Pacing matters. You begin pacing yourself. The afternoon arrives. Your hands are dusty. Your clothing is covered in soil. Your face feels warm. You look at the field. You can see the difference your work has made. It is not dramatic. Nobody is going to applaud. There is no progress bar, no achievement notification, no digital badge saying, "Congratulations, you moved dirt." But the field has changed. That is enough. The work has a visible result. Perhaps that is why ancient labor could feel satisfying, despite being exhausting. You can see what you have done. A wall becomes taller. A field becomes prepared. A pot becomes useful. A basket becomes full. A roof becomes repaired. A meal becomes ready. The connection between effort and result is immediate. You begin walking back toward the settlement. Your body is tired in a deep way. Not sleepy yet, just used. Every muscle seems aware of the day's activities. You pass a workshop. Someone is working with stone. You pass another courtyard. Someone is repairing clothing. Another person is feeding animals. Another is preparing food. The settlement is still moving. Work has not disappeared. It has simply changed shape. You sit down briefly. Someone hands you food. You eat. The meal tastes better than expected. Perhaps exhaustion improves everything. Or perhaps you are finally beginning to appreciate how much effort food represents. You look at the person who prepared it. They have spent part of the day working too. Everyone is contributing. There is no clear boundary between work and life. Life is the work. Work is the life. The two overlap constantly. This is difficult for your modern brain to understand. You are used to thinking of work as a scheduled activity that happens during certain hours. Here, many tasks are simply part of existing. If you own animals, you care for them. If you grow crops, you tend them. If your roof leaks, you repair it. If your clothes tear, you mend them. If your food needs preparation, you prepare it. There is no separate maintenance department. You are the maintenance department. You smile at the thought. Then you realize you are also the plumbing department, the heating department, the transport department, the kitchen department, the laundry department, the agricultural department, the repair department, and, apparently, the water department. Your responsibilities are expanding. The sun begins to lower. You return to the field once more to finish a small task. The light turns golden. The air becomes cooler. The settlement glows in the distance. Smoke rises from the evening fires. For a moment, the exhaustion becomes peaceful. You stop and look across the farmland. You have spent the day doing something extremely old. You have worked the soil. No machine, no engine, no digital assistance. Just you, a tool, the earth, and a community depending on the result. It is humbling. You finally return home. Your hands are dirty. Your clothes are dusty. Your shoulders ache. You wash as best you can. You eat. You sit near the fire. And for the first time, you realize that the hardest part of surviving the Bronze Age may not be any single danger. It is the accumulation, one task after another, one responsibility after another, one day after another. The Bronze Age does not need to defeat you all at once. It can simply keep giving you things to do. And tomorrow, it will. The next morning, you wake to a sound you have not heard before. It is sharp, metallic. A repeated ringing coming from somewhere beyond the houses. You sit up. For a moment you cannot identify it. Then you hear it again. Clang, clang, clang. You step outside. People are already moving toward a workshop near the edge of the settlement. You follow. The air is warmer there. A small fire burns intensely. Beside it, someone is working with metal. Bronze. You have been hearing about it, without fully understanding what makes it so important. Now you are close enough to see. Bronze is not simply a shiny material. It represents knowledge, mining, trade, fuel, craftsmanship, temperature control, tools, weapons, ornaments, and an entire network of people capable of turning raw materials into useful objects. You watch the metalworker prepare the work. The process is nothing like picking up a finished tool from a modern hardware store. There is no neat package, no printed instructions, no shelf containing 20 different sizes. The object begins with material. That material has to come from somewhere. Copper and tin, the main components of many bronze alloys, do not always come from the same place. That means trade becomes important. The materials may travel long distances before reaching the person standing beside this fire. You stare at the furnace. Heat rises. The air shimmers. The metalworker moves carefully. This is dangerous work, not because every moment is dramatic, because heat is unforgiving. A mistake can ruin valuable material. A poorly made object can break. An accident can cause injury. Skill matters. You watch the craftsmen inspect the piece of metal. They seem calm. That calmness comes from experience. They know the tools. They understand the material. They know what they are trying to produce. You are fascinated. In your world, metal objects are everywhere. You use them without thinking. A spoon, a knife, a hinge, a tool, a machine part, a screw, a bicycle, a vehicle. Metal surrounds you. Here, a small bronze object can be worth considerable effort. You begin to appreciate the material differently. Bronze is useful because it can be shaped into durable objects. It can hold an edge better than many simple stone or wooden tools. It can be used for tools, weapons, fittings, ornaments, and other purposes. But it is not magical. It has limitations. It can wear. It can break. It can be recycled. And most importantly, it requires resources. You watch the metalworker work. The sound echoes through the workshop. Clang. Pause. Clang. The rhythm is strangely hypnotic. Perhaps that is why you keep watching. The process is repetitive, just like grinding grain. But the result is different. Something is being transformed. A piece of material becomes an object. You begin to understand why skilled craftspeople could be highly valued. The knowledge is specialized. You cannot simply watch for 5 minutes and become a master. It takes practice. The metalworker's apprentice stands nearby. They are learning. They watch every movement. They probably make mistakes. They probably receive corrections. They probably repeat the same tasks many times. You recognize the pattern. It is the same way the potter taught you. Observe. Try. Fail. Adjust. Repeat. Skill is built slowly. You look at the workshop more carefully. There are tools everywhere. Stone tools, wooden tools, metal objects, containers, materials waiting to be worked. Everything has a place. Everything represents labor. You wonder how many hands were involved before a single bronze tool reached this workshop. Someone mined the copper. Someone processed it. Someone transported it. Someone obtained tin or another alloying material. Someone traded for it. Someone carried it. Someone prepared the furnace. Someone made the tools. Someone shaped the final object. A single bronze tool is a story of cooperation. That is becoming a recurring theme. Nothing here is truly individual. Even a skilled craftsperson depends on other people. The metalworker cannot create bronze from nothing. They depend on miners, traders, fuel gatherers, tool makers, farmers, animal keepers, builders, and the community that provides food. The village is an enormous web. You watch a small bronze object emerge. It is simple, but it is beautiful. Its surface catches the light. The metalworker checks it carefully. You ask, through gestures and limited understanding, what it is for. They show you a tool. You hold it. It is heavier than expected. You run your fingers over the surface. This small object feels different from the wooden tools you have been using. It is compact, strong, precise. You suddenly understand why bronze changed ancient societies. Not overnight, not everywhere at once, and not in exactly the same way, but the ability to produce and use metal tools changed what people could make and how they could work. It affected agriculture, craft production, construction, trade, warfare, status, and everyday life. Yet there is a strange contradiction. The more valuable bronze becomes, the more carefully it has to be managed. A broken object is not necessarily useless. The metal can sometimes be collected and remade. You watch scraps being gathered. Nothing is casually thrown away. You recognize the principle. It is the same with grain, the same with water, the same with wood. Resources have histories. Resources have costs. Resources have future uses. You step outside the workshop. The sound of metalworking continues behind you. Clang, clang, clang. The settlement feels different now. You notice bronze objects that you had previously ignored. A fitting here. A tool there. A small ornament. A blade. A decorative piece. Not everyone owns the same things. Some objects are more difficult to obtain. Some may indicate status. You begin noticing differences between people. Some homes appear larger. Some people possess better clothing. Some have access to specialized objects. The village is not completely equal. You had suspected that already. Now you can see it. The Bronze Age contains ordinary workers, skilled craftspeople, traders, farmers, herders, leaders, and people with different levels of wealth and power. The material world reflects those differences. You walk toward the fields with the bronze tool still in your mind. You imagine how valuable such a tool would be to a farmer. It could improve certain tasks, but the farmer cannot simply walk into a shop and buy another one if it breaks. That means maintenance matters. Care matters. Repair matters. And the person who knows how to repair it matters. Everything leads back to knowledge. You begin to realize that survival here is partly an education. Every useful skill makes you more independent. Every unknown skill makes you dependent on someone else. You think about yourself. You still have enormous gaps. You cannot make pottery properly. You cannot produce bronze. You are learning farming. You are learning water management. You know almost nothing about construction. You probably could not identify the best fuel. And if someone asked you to build a useful tool from raw materials, you would stare at them politely. Your survival chances remain questionable. But you are learning. That counts. Later in the afternoon, you return to the workshop. The metal worker is still working. The fire is lower now. The finished tools have been arranged carefully. You sit nearby. The repetitive sound continues. Clang, pause. Clang. It becomes almost soothing. The Bronze Age is full of sounds you rarely hear in modern life. Stone grinding against stone. Wood being cut. Animals calling. Footsteps on dirt. Clay being shaped. Fire crackling. Metal striking metal. Human voices. The world is noisy, but it is a natural kind of noise. There are no engines, no horns, no electronic alerts, no distant aircraft overhead. Just people making things. You watch the craftsman finish another object. They place it beside the others. Another tool has been created. Another piece of knowledge has been preserved. Another resource has been transformed. You sit quietly. The lesson is becoming clear. Bronze is not simply a metal. It is a symbol of everything that makes civilization possible. Resources from different places. People with different skills. Knowledge passed between generations. Trade connecting distant communities. Labor turning materials into useful objects. And careful management preventing those resources from being wasted. You return home as evening arrives. Your mind is still filled with the sound. Clang, clang, clang. You lie down. The village grows quiet. The fire dims. Tomorrow there will be more work, more food, more water, more farming, more repairs, and perhaps more metal. You close your eyes. Somewhere in the darkness, the workshop still smells faintly of smoke and heated earth. The Bronze Age has given you another lesson. Survival does not depend only on having resources. It depends on knowing what to do with them. By now you have learned how to carry water, work the fields, recognize useful tools, and avoid looking completely helpless in front of experienced craftspeople. You are becoming useful. Unfortunately, usefulness has a downside. People start giving you more work. This morning you are sent toward the storage area. The grain has been harvested. Now it has to survive. That sounds simple until you remember everything that can go wrong. Moisture, insects, rodents, mold, spoilage, theft, accidents. A harvest is not the end of the food problem. It is the beginning of another one. You enter the storage building. The air smells dry and earthy. Large clay containers stand against the walls. Woven baskets sit on raised surfaces. Bundles of grain are stacked carefully. You notice that nothing has been placed randomly. There is a reason for the arrangement. Stored food is a form of security. A household with food can survive a poor week. A community with reserves can survive a bad season. But stored food can also attract unwanted visitors. You hear scratching. You freeze. Everyone freezes. The sound comes again. Scratch, scratch. You look toward the corner. A small animal disappears behind a container. You stare at the experienced worker beside you. They do not look surprised. Apparently, the Bronze Age has its own tiny thieves. Rodents are not impressed by your carefully planned civilization. They simply smell grain. You begin checking the storage area. The work is repetitive. Inspect the containers. Check the grain. Move the baskets. Look for damage. Clean the area. Close openings. Repeat. You are beginning to recognize the ancient rhythm. Nothing is ever simply done. Everything needs maintenance. You cannot merely harvest grain. You have to store it. You cannot simply store it. You have to protect it. You cannot merely protect it. You have to inspect it. You cannot merely inspect it. You have to repair whatever is failing. Survival is a chain. If one link breaks, everything downstream becomes harder. You examine a clay storage vessel. Its surface is rough. It has been carefully made. The opening is narrow enough to help protect the contents. The vessel is not disposable. It represents time and skill. You lift the lid. Inside is grain. You inspect it. Dry. Clean. Good. You replace the cover. Another container is less fortunate. A small crack has appeared. That means trouble. If moisture enters, the stored food may spoil. You call someone over. The damaged vessel is moved aside. Perhaps it can be repaired. Perhaps its contents need to be transferred. Nothing is wasted if it can be avoided. You start to understand why storage technology matters so much. Agriculture creates surplus. Storage allows surplus to survive. Surplus allows communities to handle uncertainty. Without storage, a good harvest might not help much beyond the immediate season. With storage, people can carry food forward. This changes everything. You think about your modern kitchen. You open a cupboard. Food is there. You open a refrigerator. More food. You open a freezer. Even more. You probably never think about the engineering behind this. Temperature control, packaging, preservation, transportation, warehouses, supermarkets, cold chains. In the Bronze Age, preservation has fewer options. Drying, smoking, salting where salt is available, fermentation, sealing, cool storage, different methods depending on region and food. The goal is always the same. Make food last. You leave the storage room and enter another part of the settlement. Someone is preparing food. You see grain being processed. Again, you almost laugh. Grain has become the main character of your life. It appears in the field, then the storage area, then the grinding area, then the cooking area, and eventually your stomach. You begin to appreciate how central cereals were to many ancient societies. They were reliable sources of calories. They could be stored, they could be transported, they could be processed into different foods, but producing them demanded enormous labor. You watch someone grind grain. The stone moves rhythmically. You hear the familiar scrape. You have heard it many times now. You are beginning to associate that sound with food itself. Without the grinding, there is no flour. Without flour, certain foods cannot be prepared. And without the food, the day's work becomes impossible. Everything connects. Later you are asked to help prepare a simple meal. You carry ingredients. Someone lights the fire. Another person prepares the cooking vessel. The process is familiar now. You are no longer standing around wondering what to do. You have learned enough to be given a task. That feels strangely satisfying. You place the ingredients where you are told. The fire grows. Smoke rises. Your eyes water. You step away. Everyone laughs. Apparently you still have not mastered the ancient art of standing near a smoky fire without looking miserable. You cough. Someone waves the smoke away. The meal continues. Eventually, the food is ready. You sit down. The meal is simple, but you understand it differently now. Every part of it has a history. The grain came from the field. The field required soil preparation. The crop depended on weather. The grain was harvested. It was transported. It was stored. It was protected. It was processed. It was ground. It was cooked. And now you are eating it. One mouthful contains an entire chain of labor. You chew slowly. It suddenly seems impossible to waste food. Later, you help clean the cooking area. Another task. Of course. The dishes are simple. Clay bowls. Wooden utensils. Containers. But they still need cleaning. Water is precious, so you use it carefully. Again, the same principle. Resources are never free. You finish the work. The afternoon becomes quieter. You walk through the settlement. You see people repairing walls. Someone fixes a basket. Someone checks an animal. Someone prepares fibers for weaving. Someone sharpens a tool. Someone works on pottery. The settlement seems busy, even when nobody is doing anything dramatic. This is ordinary life, and ordinary life is where most survival happens. Not during battles, not during legendary events, not during moments that will become famous. Most survival is repetition. Eat, work, repair, store, clean, carry, prepare, sleep, repeat. You sit near the edge of the settlement and watch a family sorting grain. They work together. One person separates useful grain. Another removes debris. A child carries a small basket. An older person watches and corrects mistakes. You recognize the pattern. Knowledge is being passed on again. The child is learning without realizing it. One day, that child may teach someone else. This is how skills survive generations. You look at the grain. Thousands of individual kernels, small, almost insignificant. Yet together they represent weeks or months of labor. You suddenly understand why ancient societies could be so vulnerable to crop failure. If the harvest is poor, the problem is not simply that dinner is smaller. The entire chain is affected. Less grain means less food. Less food means weaker workers. Weaker workers mean less productivity. Less productivity means fewer reserves. Fewer reserves make the next season more dangerous. A bad harvest can create a cascade of problems. You look toward the fields. The plants appear peaceful. You know better now. A field is never just a field. It is a gamble. Every season is a negotiation with weather. And every storage room is an attempt to make that gamble slightly safer. The evening arrives. You return to the household. A clay lamp gives off a soft glow. The fire is low. The stored grain is secure for tonight. That is enough. You lie down. The day's work settles into your body. You think about the tiny scratch you heard in the storage room. Tomorrow, someone will check for rodents again. They will probably be there. Because survival is not about solving every problem forever. It is about solving the same problems repeatedly before they become disasters. You close your eyes. The settlement grows quiet. The grain is stored. The water is nearby. The fire is fading. For tonight, everything is under control. And for the Bronze Age, that is about as close to luxury as you are going to get.